Hey everybody, so welcome to today's webinar, which is called Mastering My Signage Portal, Discover Advanced Features and Hidden Gems. So as some of you may be aware, last year we actually hosted two webinars that were centered around My Signage Portal, which coincidentally is actually just coming up to its 10-year anniversary. So we launched it in August 2013. So yeah, just coming up to the 10-year anniversary. So the two webinars that we hosted last year, the first one, which was in May, was a general overview of the new user interface and an update on new and upcoming features. This is kind of a follow-on from that, really. The other one that we did in August was a more in-depth session exploring the features and functionality of the touchscreen side of the CMS. I suggest watching at least the overview one from May if you haven't already, especially if you don't have at least a basic knowledge of the CMS. As I say, this is kind of like a follow-on from that. The purpose of today's webinar is to take a bit of a deeper delve into the CMS and explore some of the lesser known features, but potentially quite powerful and useful as well for your kind of projects. We won't be giving a general overview or focus on any of the basic aspects. Again, this webinar is mainly for kind of advanced users, really. Hopefully help you to improve your kind of knowledge and understanding of the platform and all the diverse ways it can be used, really. So we'll make a start. We'll start by just covering a few of the recent updates. I'll say recent following on from the last webinar. What have we actually added? So first of all, the 4K content support added in August last year. So obviously the market demand for 4K solutions is increasing as content becomes more accessible, more affordable. We've had 4K hardware for several years, almost a decade, I believe. But last summer, obviously, we launched this feature, which is compatible with ranges such as our 4K monitors and our freestanding 65-inch digital poster. From next week, we're actually launching a 4K media player, which a lot of you may be aware of, which is obviously ideal for use with LED and LCD video walls, as well as existing third-party 4K screens as well. In November last year, we migrated to an Amazon AWS RDS server for a faster overall performance with media uploading, etc., and just general usage, as well as higher security protocols. In January this year, we officially launched the YouTube zone, allowing users to stream videos directly from YouTube rather than downloading the video file and then uploading it to the portal. After we actually launched this, after we made it live, we actually did some kind of improvements on it based on user feedback with regards to the mute function, the loop function, etc. And we've kind of optimized that now. But again, as always, if anyone's got any further suggestions, please feel free to get in touch with us or your account manager directly. Always open to suggestions. In May, we launched the save as function. Very kind of simple in some ways, but also again quite useful, allowing you to save playlists and touch playlists into sub organizations and also resave playlists after making some kind of general, some small edits while retaining the original playlist. So that's quite a useful feature. And just in April, we launched a more optimized version of the zone locking function. So any zone or zones can be locked by an admin in either a template or a playlist. So in a template, it means obviously they can't be moved, resized, deleted. In a playlist, it means that media inside that zone can't be removed, the order can't be changed, it can't be added to, etc. We've also been doing, again, some more general optimization work and bug fixing. So what's kind of coming up? What are we doing next? So lift and learn. So some of you, again, may be aware of this, may have come across it, some of you won't. So it's essentially content changing on screen when a product is interacted with, either lifted or placed on a sensor. We've successfully executed this on a project and it is available on request. So if you are working on any projects that require lift and learn, again, get in touch with your account manager. We can facilitate this on My Signage Portal now. Email reminders, automated notifications sent before a license expires and other events. And it's very similar to the next one as well. License renewal information available in the player section. Again, this is something that we're working on at the moment, which should be live hopefully before the end of the year. We're also trying to optimize the publishing different content to our double-sided models. So allowing for things like scheduling and synchronization, which at present aren't possible with the double-sided screens. And again, any other suggestions? We want to hear from you what you and your clients need. So just like with our general R&D with our hardware, one thing that kind of sets us apart from many other manufacturers and software providers on the market is, whatever feedback you give us will be implemented. We obviously we carry out market research. Obviously, we've got a strong R&D team and a strong R&D process. But really, for us to tailor things to the requirements of you and your customers, even if it's not a need, even if it's a want, that kind of feedback is crucial for our development, really, and to make sure that we're kind of on the right track and we're developing in the way that kind of you guys need us to be. So yeah, without any further ado, I'm going to switch over to the CMS itself. Now, the way we're going to be covering things, rather than kind of systematically going through each feature, what we're going to be doing is covering specific scenarios or questions based on the responses to the survey that we sent out on the email shot. Thank you for those who took the time to fill in that survey. It was really, really helpful. So again, anytime we send out a survey, it's really to help you guys really and help us help you. And also certain situations we've encountered in the past, whether it's once or whether it's multiple times, we're going to kind of set them up as scenarios and then show you the feature on the CMS. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Dean for the next part, and I'll set up the first question.
Can I just exit this to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
Cool.
Okay, so the first one, I'm going to set them up, as I say, I'm going to mention a question and then I'm going to kind of set up the kind of scenario really. So the question, how do I schedule a breakfast menu to play every morning? So if you need to publish scheduled content, if you need something to play, the same time every morning, for example, a restaurant that's got a lunch menu and a breakfast menu, obviously you'll need to use this feature. So over to you, Dean.
Yeah, cool. So obviously this is quite a popular thing that most people do. It's in general, you want to be able to schedule, a breakfast and a lunch menu if you are selling your screens to a particular restaurant. It just makes sense, right? You want it to be able to change dynamically as the days go on. So because of that, we obviously have the scheduling system which allows you to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do just to kind of run through the whole process. So if we assume first of all, we're going to publish like a super basic lunch menu, right? Let's just say this is our default menu on the screen, and we want it to be on there for most of the day. So obviously to do this, as everyone should know, we go to Rapid. We're just going to choose landscape for this example, and then I'm just going to add a lunch menu, as I just said. So we've already uploaded these already. Again, quite basic, but it's just for the purposes of the webinar. So here's the one I've created, right? Now, the one thing I do want to change is the actual name itself. The reason for this is because you'll see a bit later on, it's a good way to keep things organized because for one, it allows you to re-edit the playlist later on in the program area, which we'll talk about. And it also, when we go to the calendar area in the player area, which I'll show you again later on, it's just a really quick reference to what that playlist is supposed to do. So to be honest, we've noticed a lot of people don't name their playlists, but they end up kind of not knowing what it's supposed to do, which for quick things is fine. But if you want to actually like manage it on a better, to be better, that's what it's for.
Could even be more specific and call it lunch, like menu lunch or lunch menu.
Oh yeah, so yeah. Even better. Lunch menu. So if we do this, for example, press next. Again, it's just super basic breakfast menu here, right? Lunch menu, sorry. So as everybody knows, we're just going to do this as completely default. So we're not going to actually change anything. I'm going to choose the screen that I know that's online at the moment, just for the webinar, right? I'm not going to change any of these options. This is what we'll come back to in a second. So again, we're just publishing the lunch menu. We're not going to do anything else at the moment. So we're going to publish this like we normally would, and then obviously the screen then will change over to that content if something was on there beforehand. So in general, that's the lunch menu done, right? So now we need to schedule the breakfast menu, and we need it for a specific time. So just to save a bit of time, I'm going to go into program and then playlist. And I was talking about this a bit earlier. every single time that you create a playlist, it actually gets stored in this particular area. So you can see, for example, I've got like lunch menu, I've got the deal menu, which we'll talk about a bit later, and I also have a breakfast menu, which is the one I'm going to use in this case. So if you ever need to edit anything, this area is great for that, right? So I can actually like left click edit, and I can just mix and match and change whatever files I need to from that playlist. If you think of it like in a more bigger term, where like your customer, for example, has like 100 images on a playlist, it's going to be way easier for them just to switch out 1 or 2 images than it is to have to create it from the beginning again through Rapid. Like Rapid's fast, but it's not as fast as having to like start again, right? If you've already kind of formatted it the way you want it to. So if we choose the breakfast one that I have here, I can just left click it, and you can see there's a little publish icon here. So I can click that. It's going to go straight back to where we were before, which was like the step 3 of the Rapid, right? So we've just literally just skipped straight to that area because we've already created the playlist. This time, however, we're going to do something different, as I mentioned. So first of all, I'll just choose the screen again, same one as before. So we know that that one's obviously changed on our side. Now we wanted to actually have a breakfast menu on there as well. So this is where this area comes in here. So you can see at the moment, there's 3 different options. There's default, there's break, and then there's custom. So each of these options has their own priority, as we call it, where they will play based on the priority they are on the screen itself. So just to quickly cover these, we'll talk about these a little bit in the actual presentation. If I go to custom, which is the one that I would want to for the breakfast schedule in this case, I want to schedule a custom playlist that needs to play at a specific time. So in our case, because it's a breakfast one, it's probably going to be from like 7 to 11, right? That's usually what you'll see in most sort of restaurant areas and stuff. So if I go 7 to 11, like we see here, you can also see the time sort of dial here, or line, sorry, actually gives you an example as well, just for like your own benefit really, and more visual clarity. So we've done that, right? That's perfect. So we know it's going to start from 7 to 11. The other really important thing in this area is you'll see there's a box here called publish setting. Now, whenever you're publishing schedule content, it's very important to make sure that you choose additional schedule in this scenario, because if you keep this as overwrite, what's going to happen is you're going to remove the last playlist on the screen, which is not what you want. So you're going to remove the lunch menu, right? And you're going to have this one play from 7 to 11, which is correct. But from before 7 and after 11, it's not going to play anything on the screen. It's just going to be the default blue Android homepage with, digital signage homepage, which I assume some of you are probably familiar with when you've installed these screens and stuff. So make sure whenever you're doing a scheduled playlist, it needs to be additional. And based obviously from the name itself, you're actually adding on a schedule onto what's already there. So that's pretty much the way that works in that case. So if I just publish this now, press OK, and that's pretty much how we've kind of set up how to publish a lunch menu and then a breakfast menu. Do you want to go to the next question?
Yep. So we will come on to in just a second how to actually check that, but yeah, we'll come on to that in just a second, guys. So the next one is, how do I change the content on a screen for just one day or even just a few hours if an important event is happening? So let's say the scenario is a cafe or a fast food place, whatever, has excessive stock of a perishable item, for example. So extra sandwiches have been made, they need to be sold that day. So that's the kind of setup, that's the scenario. So during that period, you don't want any of the normal scheduled content to display. All you want is this very specific, important message to display for a very specific period.
Yeah, perfect. So I was speaking before about the different schedules that you could set. So one of them was default, one of them was custom, one of them was break. So this time, if we go back into program playlist, again, we've already created one just for quickness of this webinar. If I go into this one, and then once again, I'm going to click publish. We're on to the same step as we were before, which is the publish step. This time, if we actually select break instead, it's quite similar to the custom in the layout. It's still the same. You can still pick the time, and all the rest of the stuff that's here. The difference this time is, first of all, we want to change this to additional again. And then in the case that we just described, let's say from, I don't know, let's say from around now maybe. So from like one, where is it? Let's say from like that's fine actually. Let's say from a 12 till I don't know, 2, for example, right? We need this specific playlist to play on the screen because it's very important for that particular time. So when we do this itself, I said earlier about the priority. So the break is actually the most highest priority on the screen itself. So if you think of it like different levels, where default is the bottommost level or layer, you could say as well, if you think of like Photoshop or something, and then above that is custom, and then above that is break. So during the break period, which for us is from 12 till 2, anything during that period of time is going to get completely replaced by this particular playlist, right? So, there's loads of scenarios this can come up with, like Bacon said in his scenario, or maybe like I've seen like flood warnings. Maybe you want a flood warning on the screen for an hour. That's also kind of a good one. Or maybe someone important's coming into your office and you need them to, you want to welcome them. You have like a nice display that says welcome, etc. Just for an hour. And even if you have even if it's like a breakfast and lunch menu like we've described, it will still replace it for that period of time. But the whole point is it's great because it will go back to what was on there before, which means you don't need to keep republishing things from the beginning, which is kind of the point of it, right? Just to cover a few other things whilst we're here as well, you can set specific dates and times. So in this case, if we say, okay, so that's that important thing that's going to happen. So in our case, it's like 50% off deal, right? It's going to happen on, I don't know, let's say tomorrow, right? And then it lasts until next Friday. So just click that date and then we'll click this date here. And now you can see this calendar is actually changed. So now it's going to start next Friday and then the Friday after. And as I said before, because we're doing it as an additional schedule and it's the top priority, this is going to completely remove everything between those hours that we've set on those particular dates. You can also as well, if you click on week here, you can set this to be recurring. So if you need it to be, every single Friday for the foreseeable future, you can also do that on here as well. The example I usually give of this is like a school cafeteria where they need like a menu for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, because obviously, there's different meals that the school needs for the children. So it's quite useful for them. And in that regard, that means they typically have like 5 different playlists on the screen, right? Which is great. So if we just use this then, so I'm just going to say for a week, the times that we've set, I'm going to choose additional schedule to make sure it's correct. And we've chosen breaks. We want it to be the highest priority. We'll just select the screen again as usual, press publish, press OK. And then, like I said, between those times that we've set, that's what we'll display. Yeah.
So before we move on to the next one, guys, I just want to visually show what Dean was talking about in terms of the different priority order. So if you imagine it like this, so you've got 3 different priority orders. You've got default, so that will only play if there's only default playlists on there. Then you've got custom. If custom playlists are playing, i.e. scheduled playlists, the default playlists won't display during those periods. And then on top of that, you've got break. So they're kind of generally emergency or urgent messages where, again, any break playlists that are displaying during that period no custom or default playlists will display.
Yep.
So I'm going to switch back to Dean, and the next question is, how can I see what is currently scheduled to display on a particular screen? So content is playing on a screen, but you need to check if something has been scheduled correctly. This is quite a common one that some people need to be kind of shown where it is on the CMS. So over to you, Dean.
Yep, good question. So a lot of questions I do get related to this is this actual area we're on at the moment. So what I get asked a lot is, are all these the playlists that are currently on my screen at the moment? So you can see like all the ones that we've done in the past. Obviously, some of these are just testing ones and such. You can see it displayed here. In the published area, this is literally just a log of what you've published. So don't worry about this area in terms of what's on the screen. Again, this is just a log. It's useful for when, you need some technical support or troubleshooting or something where you need to find what that, when that playlist was published, etc. However, to actually see what's currently on the screen, it's a different area. So if you go to player here, what we've got here is we've got all our screens, and we'll talk about why we've organized them like this in a bit later on. However, if I click on the actual screen name itself, which for us is just numbers, again, we'll explain that in a second. What we're going to do is we're going to go to program information, just ignore this part for now. And then what we can actually see here is every single playlist that published on that particular screen or device is going to be shown here. So you can see straight away there's a list. So we've got our first one, which is lunch menu. And you can see it says play type looping, and it says like the duration of how long the playlist lasts for. And you can see there's no play time because it's a default one, right? And you can just kind of see like the expiration and stuff that you've set, right? And then you can see for the second one, which is the breakfast one we did, this one's a bit different where it says it needs to start on a particular date or time. Again, the duration is kind of the same, right? And then you can see when it's supposed to start and end from. So that's basically for the the breakfast and lunch sort of example we did. If I click the instant tab, which is essentially just the break tab, it essentially just means this is going to instantly happen, right? When you schedule it. You can see we've got the one we just created, just published last, and again we can see the time and date is supposed to play. The last thing, which is quite cool, which to be honest, a lot of people don't actually know about, is there's actually a calendar of how this all looks as well. So you can see for every single different sort of playlist that you use, it actually has a label, and those labels are coloured to make it obviously a lot more easy to understand what it is. So you can see we've got like our breakfast and lunch one here. If we actually hover over them, it just tells them when they're supposed to start and stuff. So obviously the lunch one is going to be like the whole day, every day, right? Whilst for the breakfast one, because that's a high priority, it's going to take over at that particular time. And then we also have the break one we did, which was like the deal, right? And that one is going to only start on the Friday that we set here. And then obviously you can see the green label ends on this Friday, and then it doesn't go on after that date. So we can essentially just see physically like how it's displayed. This can be really important if you have a lot of playlists that you do want to schedule on the screen. Again, going back to like the school sort of cafeteria example, right? They want to see a different label for each day just to be sure, okay, I know I've done it correctly, so I'm happy with that. Also, if you ever make a mistake or let's say you no longer need something anymore, you can just physically remove it here. Like just click this little icon, click OK. And then whatever that playlist was that was supposed to play is basically just going to get removed from the screen. It's still on your account, right? You still have access to open up that playlist and edit it and such because you still saved your account. It's just on the screen itself. The screen's going to go, okay, I've just been told I no longer need to play that playlist, so I'm just going to just remove it from my internal storage and kind of move on and do whatever it's supposed to do. But yeah, the other thing I wanted to show actually as well is we kind of skipped over this area, but you can take a screenshot of the content as well. So whatever's showing on the screen at that current time, it will actually display that physically for you, which is quite good, right? Because it just gives you an idea of what's supposed to be on there at that time, especially if you're working really far away in like a different country, and you're kind of managing quite a large amount of screens. You can at least take a screenshot, see what's on there at the moment, and be kind of satisfied with how it looks. You can see, for example, with the ones that I've done in the past as well. You can see they're all here in that example. So it's quite good, just for that basically.
Yep. Okay. Well, the next one's been covered by the screenshot scenario that Dean just mentioned. So yeah, I mean, because it's kind of one in the same really. Once you publish something, especially if it's due to display now, there are other ways of checking that it's been downloaded correctly, which we'll come on to in a little bit. But really, what you want to see is what is actually displaying right now. So obviously, the screenshot functionality allows you to do that, and it's really useful feature. Okay, so the next one I want to go on to is how do I group my screens together in a way that I can publish to them simultaneously, even if they're in different organizations? So this is quite a specific one, but it is very, very useful once you understand how to use it. So it's basically a function called groups. So let's say, for example, you've got a fast food chain where some locations have drive-throughs, but others don't. And you want to be able to publish to all the drive-through screens. But obviously, by doing that, without having groups, you'd essentially have to go through each individual drive-through screen and select it. So you can do it with naming conventions, which some users do that. But it essentially allows you to create a group of screens from multiple organizations. And something else to keep in mind for this as well is a single screen can have multiple groups, can be involved in multiple groups. So essentially it works like tags, if you think of it that way as well. So different ways of thinking about it. So I just want to, before we actually get into this, I just want to show you again, just a visual representation of the scenario that we're going to create. So we've got a kind of, admin organization, if you like. The name of this fictitious fast food chain is Burger Hut. They've got 3 locations. They've got Birmingham, Manchester, and London. They've all got menu boards, but only Birmingham and Manchester have got a drive-through screen. So what we want to do is we want to be able to create a group of drive-through screens and a different group of menu screens, so that when you're publishing content, you don't have to manually go through and select them all. You can just publish to all the drive-through screens together simultaneously, even though they're in different organizations. So now when Dean actually shows you, it's hopefully going to make more sense.
Yeah, cool. This is actually quite a common question and quite a common thing that maybe some people don't actually know about as well. So with our actual system, you can create organizations and sub-organizations. This is really useful just for keeping things organized, right? That's the name, comes from organization in general. So what I've got here is just as an example, I've got 5 screens in this account. 2 of them are menus and 2 of them are drive-throughs, and these are actually for different locations. So I've got this one as like Birmingham and this one as Manchester. I've obviously just abbreviated it, right? So what I'm going to do quickly is I'm going to click this button here called More. I'm going to click Select Column. This may also be a thing that people aren't aware of, but you can actually select different things that you want to see from your players. So in my case, I want to see organization and I actually want to see groups. So if I select these 2 options, you can see this is kind of expanded out now, and it's actually showing me, this is the organizations that this particular screen's in, and this is the groups, right? So you can see, as I was saying, I've got menu in Birmingham, I've got a menu in Manchester, right? So this gives me a visible indication of what they are. So we've got one screen here that we've just left in an organization called Burger Hut. So just an example of a retail outlet, right? So what we're going to do with this, if we assume this is a new screen that's just been put into our account, we want to be able to organize this in a way that makes it beneficial for us and maybe even the end user, right? So what I'll do first is I'm going to go to settings. I'm going to go to organization here. And what you'll see is if I open up this area here, you'll see I've got, obviously I've got my webinar one, which is just the main one. And then I've created a sub organization called Burger Hut. So this would be your customer in that ideal, right? We also have the locations that we've made sub-organization underneath them. So we've got Birmingham and Manchester. So as I was mentioning, 2 of the screens, one of them's drive-through, one of them's menu, are in Manchester, and the same sort of 2 sort of screens are also in Birmingham that are, obviously 2 different screens completely. What we want to do is, if we need to add this new screen to this franchise now, we can just click the actual organization here itself, click Add. And then for this one, we'll just do London. So if I go London, like so, press OK, and then you'll see that organization or sub-organization gets added to that particular franchise. Now, what we can do is, if we go back to player, we can actually do that here as well, and you'll see visibly, how it is. We can click on the name of the screen itself. And then what we can do is we can click this little this area here, which says organization, and we can assign that to that particular organization or sub-organization that we just created. So London, right? So we're going to click that one, press OK, and then that screen is now going to be associated with that organization. The reason why you might do this, there's a lot of reasons, and we'll come back to some of them later on. But for this one, I'm just going to call it like I don't know, London menu or something, right? So London menu. There we go. Just so we know what it is, right? So that's what we'll do for that one. And then what we can do as well is, we mentioned before about groups. So the organization structure is great because it gives you the ability to obviously organize the screens into these individual locations. However, what if in our case, you have some screens on the menus and some screens on the drive-throughs, and they're in like different organizations? It's like, if you want to publish to multiple screens at the same time, you don't want to waste time having to like select each of them individually, like going down the list, especially if you have like hundreds, right, in a franchise. You definitely want to be able to just make it really simple and quick. So you'll see at the top, next to organization, there's actually a tab called group. So if you click that one, you'll see at the moment I don't have any groups that I've created. If I click it again, similar to how we did the organization earlier, I can click add. And then for the first one, we'll call it menu or menus, I guess. Oops, menus, right? And then we'll create another group, same place. So again, add, and then we'll call this one drive through, like so. Press OK. So now we've got two groups, right? So what we can do with our screens now is we can actually assign that that particular screen to also a group. So for this one, we know it's a menu. We already know that because that's how we purchased it, right? We know it's in London. We've already sorted that part out, and now we just need the group to be that particular one, right? So we need to make that one in the menu group and press OK. So again, the reason for this is because you can keep things more organized, especially if you have a lot of screens you need to deal with. And as Bacon mentioned, you can have more than one group for a screen. So if I wanted, I could have, you know, maybe the menu needs to be like a group menu, and then maybe it needs to be like deals for, you know, specific deals for wherever those screens are in all those different locations are meant to show. So it's basically just a way of being able to publish to multiple screens, you know, with the content that they need and keep it organized. Yeah. Did that answer that question?
Yeah, if you want to quickly blitz through the other ones, just to put the other ones into the relevant groups. You don't need to explain it. If you're just doing that while I move on to the next question.
So one thing you can do as well, which we'll probably talk about more in a second, you can actually do multiple groups and you can actually move and change settings for groups, for screens at the same time. So just for this quick scenario here, I can click those two screens. We know they're both, oops, sorry, not that one, sorry. These two. So we know they're both menus, right? They haven't got a group yet. So you can click like player configuration here, and you can see all of the different stuff that you can change is actually here. So for our one, we want to go to, where is it now? Here we go, more, sorry. So we want to go to change group, and then we want to put all of those into the menus, right, that we just set up. So that's just a quicker way to kind of organize things in that case, and then obviously the same for these as well.
Hopefully all these kind of time-saving tips, guys, will, you know, really help when you're actually in a practical situation, you know, rather than spending ages doing it, especially if you've got like 50 or 100 screens, it can save a lot of time.
And especially if you start doing this now.
Definitely. So yeah, that kind of covers the group situation. So the next thing I want to move on to is roles. So for this, the situation is a third-party content creation company are creating the artwork for my menu boards, but I want to create a login that only allows them to upload the images and videos that they're creating and do nothing else. So obviously you don't want a third party to be able to see the screens, publish content, have any other access apart from specifically what they need. So I'm going to hand over to Dean to show how to do that.
Yeah, cool. So we can just kind of use the organization that we just created as an example, right? So we created the London one. So we've just set that up. It's a new thing we've just added. So what we can actually do on top of that is we can assign a user account to that particular organization where maybe that person, you know, who you pass that account to, can only do certain things to. So first thing I would do is if we go to role, so settings role, what we're going to do is we're going to create a role that's specific to what we want that particular user account to be able to do. So the user and the role are completely different from each other because you can have a user have more than more than one user can have the same role, right? If that makes sense. But you can't have like loads of different roles for a user, right? So if we go to this area, we'll create a new role, and then we're just going to make it simple. So if we just say that they got access to the homepage, they got access to media here, then we can actually kind of just restrict what they can do. So it's quite granular, and some of the times maybe it's not as needed, right? But you can see like almost every single thing that you can do is actually gives you an option to restrict it. So in our case, if we just want this particular user account to only be able to upload content, maybe we don't even want them to be able to delete stuff, right?
I'd probably just uncheck that.
Yeah.
Uncheck the general media and then literally just tick.
Yeah, like tick them specifically, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can actually just do this, click image.
Or even just untick image, literally just upload image, upload video.
Yeah, even that as well.
Because that's the scenario is we only want this content creation company to upload images and videos. We don't even want them to be able to delete anything or create any RSS feeds or any of the other things within the media section. Upload image, upload video, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. So as Bacon mentioned, we could just do this. This is super simple role, right? They literally have one purpose. It just saves them having to send that content to you and then you having to upload it. So if we just pick this as the role, right, we'll call this, I don't know, like media only maybe. So media only, that's the role. We know what it means. Makes sense to us at least. We're going to skip everything else. We're going to press OK at the bottom. Oops, I guess we already have that name set up on here before. So we'll call it media only 2. There we go. And then we'll just do what we did then. So we just want to upload images and videos, and then hopefully this name hasn't been taken. We'll find out in a second. Yep, there we go, perfect. Cool, so we've created our role. I'm gonna go to user, and then we'll just create our user account now. So with the user account itself, you can see I've already got quite a few that I've created over here. You can just kind of make this as you need it to be, right? If we click create, the top left, we could just make it really simple in this case, right? We can just say like, this needs to be like, I don't know, maybe like media art only or something, right? So that's the username itself. And this is what we can give to that particular person. For the password, obviously, because you have control, you can just give it whatever you like. I usually just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for these like basic things, which is definitely don't recommend keeping it like that. And then what we need to do then is select the organization, which is what we mentioned before, the one we created. So it needs to go to London in this case. So we'll choose that one. And what that actually means is for that particular user account, they can only access what's in London. So this goes for the players that you've assigned there, any kind of media you uploaded there, any playlists that have been added to there or saved to there, etc. It literally just means they're restricted just to that one organization, right? So you get more, you get more control over what they can actually do. And then for the role, which is what we just set up, we're just going to click media only to, right? Choose that one. And that means obviously that particular user can only do what we've set their roles to be. And then you'll see here there's actually an asterisk next to email. The reason for this is because Bacon mentioned earlier, we're going to have a system where you actually get notifications through email. So if you want to use it and you want to get that kind of ball rolling, I would recommend just adding your email or adding the email that if you want them to get notifications. If not, it doesn't really matter what you'll do. We're not sure if we want to keep it as like, a must-have thing yet, but in this case, if I literally just put example.com, it works, right? Because all it's looking for is like an email field. And then, of course, after that, we just press OK. You can fill out the rest of the stuff, but it's not required. Like the phone number is just for your own information, really. So yeah, press OK, and then we'll actually have that role created. And what I can do now is, user accounted created. If I paste that into there because I copied the username before I finished it, and then wow, look at that! I don't think I've ever seen that before. 4 2s. So I'm just going to log in using the verification code, and then we'll be able to go into what we actually just created then. There we go. Yeah, so you can see literally super basic. They can only upload media, that's it. And they can only upload pictures and videos. Everything else has been completely disabled on their side.
You want to log back into the other one, Dean?
Yep.
So the next question that we've got, the next scenario, how do I set my screens to power on and off automatically? So basically, the scenario is you don't really want to have to rely on staff to manually power screens on and off. Often what happens is they get turned off, someone forgets to turn them back on, and then obviously the screen becomes useless. That happens quite regularly, especially specifically, I still see quite a lot of, like, for example, domestic TVs being used, where even when a USB stick's being used with those, a lot of manual interaction is needed. Someone needs to press play on a file, and after it's looped a certain amount of times, they have to press play again, or they have to set it up and set it to loop, etc. So yeah, one of the things I just want to highlight here is there's some specific features, this being one of them, that are only really available on an all-in-one system. So again, as many of you are aware, our products have a display, a media player, and the software all together as a package solution, which is very rare in this industry, especially if it's an effective solution. So this is one example. If you had a media player connected to a screen, then okay, you can control the media player turning on and off, but what does that do to the screen? Some screens are going to turn off after a while, some aren't. Some are going to be woke back up when the media player comes back on, some aren't. So with ours, that because it's an all-in-one system, you're controlling the player inside and the screen. So yeah, over to you, Dean.
Yeah, just to quickly go through a few of the options you can do then in that case. So probably a lot of people already know about this. You can set on and off times. So I've gone into this particular player here, right? If I choose the activate switch, this is the most important part about each of these areas. This switch itself tells the screen this is what you want it to do. So you want to send this particular command to the screen, right? Obviously, in the on and off time, you just set when it wants to come on and when you need it to go off. So it's simple enough. You just need to make sure it's enabled, so it actually will happen as well. And you can actually do this for over the same the recurring days, I suppose, or you can do it for each day, and you can just set it up here individually, which is quite useful for people that work Monday to Friday and stuff. The reason why there's more timers here is because you can have it go on and off throughout the day. Most people don't really use that too much, but it's still kind of useful for some people. Just to go over the other things quickly as well. So if you go to download time, you can actually do a similar kind of concept where you can set a specific time where you want the screen to be downloading content. Which can come up it's kind of a niche requirement, right? But there is cases where you do need content to be downloaded at a specific time, especially if you need the bandwidth between certain hours, kind of important systems. So maybe you just want the content to download at midnight when it's not going to be used. So it's quite good for that. You can change like the display properties as well, like how the screen looks and stuff, which is quite cool. If we go to volume settings, you can actually, again, similar to the on and off, you can set up timers for when you want the screen to actually, become more louder or become quieter. And you can set like what you need the default volume to be. Again, more of a niche scenario, but there's occasions where we've used it in the past and people have used it to quite good use. You can also go to player parameters as well. So this one's quite useful. So you'll notice with a lot of our screens, we can actually set like synchronization on them. Like you'll notice when we started the session, we've got like menu boards behind us. You can do a lot of this remotely, which means you don't have to physically do it with a remote, which is quite cool. And a lot of times when we're setting these up on our side, we actually just do it remotely as well, because we know as soon as the screen gets connected to the network, as long as we've enabled this switch here and we've set what we need to set up, it's just going to immediately download that content or download those settings and just do it for us, which is great.
Before Dean moves on to the last one, the change channel, again, I just want to set up a specific scenario for this one. So because this has happened a couple of times as well. So imagine you've got a display. This isn't applicable for media players, but you've got a display. So the customer, they've got a skybox connected to the display via HDMI, and they want to be able to schedule changing the input automatically. So basically, they want to use the screen for advertising most of the time, but then for whatever reason, if it's a sporting event or something like that, they want to be able to switch automatically to the HDMI input, or to display either a skybox or any other kind of external HDMI source.
Yep, and that's pretty much what this area is for, the last one. So you can see you can pick what you need it to change to. So obviously the choices depend on the actual device itself. Usually HDMI, VGA, and digital signage, which is the default Android system. And then obviously you can just pick the times, and you can do more than once throughout the day, similar to the on and off times. Quite good. It's quite useful. Yeah,
that's another really good example, as I was saying earlier, of an all-in-one system having a big advantage over a media player, a screen, and a software package coming from 3 different suppliers, 3 different sources. It's a fully integrated solution, which in these particular scenarios make it very powerful. And even when these things aren't needed, like makes it kind of more future-proof. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next one. So a customer that I've sold advertising space on my screens, and I need proof of playback. Where can I find this?
Yeah, that's a good one. This comes up quite often these days as people move towards using like digital signage as advertising space as well. So if you go into the logs area, we have all these different logs here, but we're just going to cover specifically the one that says play logs and day, and we'll talk about the other two in a second as well. So what this area actually does is it gives you the results of what's currently playing on the screens throughout that particular like date that you set here, for example. So I'm just going to keep it from starting from yesterday till today. I'm going to select the organization. So I'm just going to choose webinar because that's the one I did it on earlier, just for this example. I'm just going to search for it. So it's going to come back to me with the results of, that whichever particular screen that I want to focus on, right? So I've just called mine like Dean's test screen, right? Good name. And then you can see all the information about that particular play log or playback kind of sequence is shown here. So you can see the name of the screen, the serial number, the organization, so webinar was mentioned, the content that was playing, how many times it's played, how many times per hour, how many, the total time it's been playing for since the screen's kind of been on and logging that information, and also the times per hour as well. So all this is really useful information that you can actually send to your customer. And the way you can actually do this, because obviously this is just, you don't want to just screenshot this. You can actually export that file as a CSV sort of Excel spreadsheet, which is, really useful. Just be like, here's the log of what's been happening on the screen. This is how many times your content's played. There you go. In that regard.
Brilliant. Yeah, perfect. And a similar one, but not the same. So this is for the touch logs. So I want to see how many how my touch playlist is being interacted with, so I can optimize the user experience. So you need to make sure that users are interacting with your content, your touchscreen content in the desired way, basically. So you can potentially go in and change the position of a button, or change the size of a button, or change the structure of your touch playlist. It can be quite a powerful analytics tool.
Yeah, so we actually implemented the play logs like much earlier on, and then we got so much good feedback from it that we just decided to do a touch logs as well. So touch logs is kind of the similar sort of idea, right? Where it's giving you a log, a playback of what's actually happening on that particular screen. So again, in my case, I did a test one earlier. Just again, it just tells you the name of it. You can see I've got like different ones because I've changed the name, the serial number, the organization once again. And it actually tells you like this is the touch screen that you're using on that particular device. Touch playlist. And these are the particular buttons that have been touched, and this is what they do, and then this is the sort of end result, right? So it's really good if you think of just different scenarios where you want to get feedback from what your customers are doing, right? It's like, oh, what are they touching the most? What's the most important thing for them on that playlist that you've created? So like in this case, I can see, okay, so someone's touched video 2, it says it's going to play content in a zone, and then it's going to actually tell me what content it's playing. And you can see this has been touched quite a few times, right, in this scenario. And you can also see as well, like the website is example of an output, and there's so much other stuff you can do with the buttons that we talked about in the last webinar, but it's quite useful.
And again, just like with the player logs, this can be exported as an Excel spreadsheet. Then you can obviously further analyze and create graphs and whatever else you need to do if that data needs to be presented. And there's just a few more scenarios, guys, to cover, and then we'll obviously open up for the Q&A session. So the next one is something has appeared on a screen that was not supposed to be there. How can I check who published it? So basically, for accountability, need to check who carried out a particular action. Now, for this to be relevant, obviously, individual user accounts do need to be created for each individual user. I know that's not always done. Often, we issue an admin account and that's just used by everyone, and that's fine. If that's, it can be used in that way. There is no limit on how many different user accounts that can be created. And as Dean mentioned earlier, they can all have admin role if that's what you want to do, or they can all have specific roles to limit specific functions and basically make it as foolproof as possible, or to make it as streamlined as possible. But this is essentially for accountability.
Yeah. So as you can see from the actual player user operations area, you can see every single thing that a particular user does actually gets logged on the system itself. So you can see like some of the ones that I've just done literally like not even long ago. Like I logged back into this account again because we logged out for the other one. You can see when I've created a playlist, when I've deleted playlists and all that kind of stuff. Screenshot here as well. it tells you the exact time. It even tells you like where the IP of that is from, if that helps. If you're not too sure, we've given everyone the same user account, right? So it's just really good just for that information, and it's really good for like troubleshooting and technical support as well, because it just helps kind of like understand what went wrong in certain scenarios where things do go wrong. Yeah.
Brilliant. We looked earlier at the screenshot function, and that obviously shows what is displaying on a particular screen at a particular time, but you might want to check to make sure something's actually downloaded. So this next one is, I've published something to a screen. How do I make sure it is downloaded correctly? So for peace of mind, especially if it's not just scheduled to display right now, it's scheduled to display next week, but you want to make sure it's actually been downloaded by the screen. That can be done as well. There's two separate areas it can be done. Do you want to start with the player one thing? Because I think that's probably more practical, and then you can show the player monitoring separately.
Yeah. So if you go into the player area here itself, obviously on the right side here, there's quite a lot of buttons that, some people know what they do, some people don't. One of the ones that is quite useful, and what Bacon mentioned, is you can actually specifically choose the player monitoring for that screen or that device. And what that will give you is all the results, shown literally in front of you, what's actually happening with that device itself. It's just shown here. So a lot of this stuff, a lot of the actual events might not mean a lot at first, but once you understand what they do, it does kind of make sense. So you can see like download task, for example, means it's downloaded some kind of setting. So we've been messing around with the settings, right? So it's the screen's actually tried to download a setting in that particular time. You can also see like, download a playlist in this case. And then you can see here, it tells me this is the particular image that it had to download when we published earlier. And it's telling me, output is telling me this is the full amount of data or bytes that image actually had. And it's saying, I've done them all. It's all done. You 100% know that it's on the screen. It's a bit more specific, right? And maybe there's not always a scenario to use this, but it is quite useful. Again, with the troubleshooting and that kind of stuff is quite good. And the other area as well, which gives you just more visibility on like a bigger level. Same kind of concept, but you can actually kind of do this for all of your screens as well, and you can actually kind of filter things out as well. So, for example, you can see, if I go to which one is it? Sorry, event. Sorry, here it is. Your screen's a bit zoomed out than mine is. Usually mine's here. So you can see with events, for example, there's loads of different events that all have their own different things that happen, and you can just filter them out and just check things. Like a common one I actually get a lot is like if a customer sort of their playlist expires because they haven't set it to like go any longer than maybe a couple of months, right? I can actually go into the event here and see what that playlist was by seeing when it was removed from the screen, which is quite good. So it's useful for those kind of scenarios, right?
Definitely. And then the final one that we've got on here is an image I used recently had an oversized resolution. How can I check that and all the other images I've uploaded are not oversized? So this is a relatively common one. When we find vastly oversized images, what I mean by oversized is obviously if you've got a HD screen that it's not beyond 1920 by 1080 or 1080 by 1920 in portrait. Whenever it is, the first thing we normally ask, by the way, is was this created using Adobe Illustrator? Because it's very difficult to set the actual pixel output in Illustrator, even though when you create it, you're setting the pixel size. You're not actually setting the pixel size, you're setting the aspect ratio. So it's always best to check the actual resolution of an image or a video before it's uploaded. But in this scenario, we know that there's been at least one image that's oversized. Dean's going to show you how to quickly check all the other images, in one go, basically.
Yeah, so if we go to the media tab, again, this is probably a very uncommon thing that people know, but obviously as default, it shows all the content as like a thumbnail, right? If you actually click this button here, it shows them all individual as a list, and there's multiple ways why this is useful. For one, you can see more things at the same time, right? Two, as Bacon mentioned, you can see the resolution. So if we have a lot of cases where someone's uploaded like 10,000 pixel screen image, right? And they're like, oh, it's not displaying on the screen. Well, it's probably because the screen doesn't know how to read it, right? but this area just gives them, just tells them like this is what it is, right? This is the resolution, and you can just check. Even if you need to check if it's like 1920 by 1080 as landscape or the opposite for portrait, this will just tell you as well, right? Which is quite useful. And you got more information as well, like who uploaded it, which kind of goes back to the user operations earlier, and also when that was uploaded. So it's quite useful. Yeah.
Brilliant. So guys, we've overrun a little bit. We haven't got obviously quite reached 2 o'clock yet, but we just wanted to make sure we're covering some of the more kind of common scenarios. But I do want to open it up now to questions and answers. So has anybody got any specific questions that they'd like to ask about the CMS, about anything that we've covered today, or any other specific scenarios? Feel free to either use the chat or use or just kind of raise your hand, and we can deal with those, and we can unmute you. That's not a problem.
There's a lot
already in the chat, which we can cover now. We're going to be recording this session, and we're also going to be posting it on YouTube. Does it need to be going through Rapid? No, as kind of Dean demonstrated, there's multiple ways to do the same thing. I think most of these questions have been answered, but just in case, publishing a specific playlist can be done probably 3 or 4 different ways, depending on preferred workflow. Really, we try to make it as user friendly and as intuitive as possible in that way. A normally publish a general playlist under custom. We could probably look at that specific situation in more detail, Monica, but basically the default playlist would be, if you're scheduling things, the default playlist, I'd probably just have something generic like a logo or something that's always going to be relevant. Then everything on top of that as an additional schedule, as a custom publish, then yeah, that way, at least then if nothing's scheduled to display, something, relevant is going to display. But yeah, as Guillaume mentioned, it's best to kind of let us know, get in touch with your account manager or get in touch with us directly, and we can look at your specific scenario.
Subscriptions I do.
Yep. So James, we mentioned this towards the start. So hopefully before the end of the year, we'll have the subscription renewal email system set up. Obviously, there's lots of different aspects involved with setting up a system like that, as Dean mentioned, one of which being the data collection of the email addresses themselves. Obviously, we don't necessarily, we don't want a situation where we're getting in touch with your customers directly when we need to be going through you guys. Yep. There will be a recording, Gitty. That's no problem. Yeah, I think most of these. Stuart lost the audio, but again, Stuart, there will be a recording available. And John, yep, even though your signal kept dropping again, there'll be a recording available, no problem at all. Monica, if you wanted to expand a little bit in where you put, I missed where you clicked in to see the screen.
I think maybe she meant when I clicked the actual name.
Oh, okay. Bolly explained, and I think she understood then. Yeah. Brilliant. Stephen, what about lift and learn? I think the best thing to do with that is obviously it's quite a bespoke situation. So get in touch with your account manager. We can facilitate that. Like I say, we've successfully executed multiple projects now using various hardware. Again, you can provide hardware. We've got our own suppliers, but it's best to kind of deal with that on a case by case basis. We will make it a standard part of the CMS, but at this point, it's kind of project by project really. Monica, do you know why images can sometimes appear on the screen even when they aren't in the playlist or uploaded in the media? Does it store memories? So again, Monica, I think again these things are best to deal with on a case by case basis. If something isn't scheduled to display, it shouldn't be displaying. So chances are something has been published or scheduled incorrectly. But again, we can deal with those as they come across as we come across them. So get in touch with us directly or your account manager.
That's something that we've looked into.
Yeah, Kieran, you mentioned about oversized images being kind of blocked. Yeah, it's something that we have looked into and we are continuing to do work on.
The main problem with that is because we're moving more towards 4K, we have to be careful because we don't want to block people. Like people can upload 4K images to a HD screen, right? And that can cause issues or for it not to display correctly. We can't just stop the actual 4K upload completely. So we have to come up with a system where, I don't know, maybe it gets converted or something like that. That was obviously the easiest or the best answer.
Yeah, but as Dean said, it's quite a tricky one, because even if we had something in place that blocked things that were higher than 4K, we still might come into situations, problems where someone's sending a 4K video to a HD screen. It's very difficult to manage it at the point of upload. But we are looking into that further, Kieran, for sure. Monica, can you let me know who my account manager is? Our team manager just left. I'm not sure who my team knows who our contact is. Best thing to do, Monica, is drop an email to webinar@allseedtech.com or info@allseed-tech.com. Yep, it will be coming up on screen in just a second. That's a good idea, Dean. And then we can check our records and let you know. Oh, brilliant. So Bolly's sent an email address there. You can send it to info@or and we can help you out. Similarly, guys, obviously continue to ask any questions you like, raise your hand or use the chat box. But if you've got any other questions, again, get in touch with your account manager, email either of those email addresses. We can set up a one-on-one session if necessary. Obviously, you can come and visit our office in Birmingham or Ostend in Belgium. Or we can come to you, most of the time, depending on what demonstrations needed. Yeah, so anything you need from our side in terms of demonstration or further explanation of any of the features we've covered today, any of our hardware, anything at all, please do get in touch and we'd be more than happy to help. So, guys, it seems like there's no more questions on the chat. So we're going to close off today's session. We're glad that some of you have found it very useful. And again, just like with the suggestions for our R&D, the improvement of the software, development of new products, even with webinars, if you've got an idea of something that you want us to focus on a little bit more, we can set up a one-on-one session or we can do a general webinar. We're always open to ideas and suggestions, so please do get in touch. And yeah, once again, I hope everybody found it useful, and thank you everyone for committing your time today to help better understand your knowledge of the CMS, and hopefully it will lead to more sales for you guys and happy customers all round. Brilliant. Okay, thanks guys. We're going to close today's session. Again, anything else, please get in touch. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.